Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Comprehension Strategies. My name is Cynthia, one of the instructors with Iris Reading. Today's workshop is brought to you by Iris Reading, so we're happy to see you today. You may know us for our speed reading workshop. That's really what Iris Reading is known for. That workshop has been taught in over 100 cities around the world. We're very, very proud of that material. We have launched something brand new in the month of March, so we are happy to hear your feedback on today's presentation, which is Comprehension Strategies. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them either in the chat or you can post a comment in the end. You can send us an email. You can check out our website. We do have a team member of Iris Reading in the chat answering any questions that you may have during the session today. If you'd like to share where you're joining us from, you are more than welcome to do so. As I said, Iris Reading is based out of Chicago. That's where Iris Reading was born, was in the city of Chicago. So if you want to share where you are joining us from, and also if you have ever heard of us before. Again, we did say that we're pretty much known for our speed reading workshop. So if you haven't heard of us, then this is a good opportunity to check out, once again, our website and check us out also on social media. We'll share that in a moment. So a few of the documents that we will use for today's class, you can find them at irisreading.com/comp. All right. We will reference a few documents. You don't have to click this link. I'm sorry. I will also share them on my screen. But if you want to just maximize your screen, right, you want to see the font a little bigger, might look a little fuzzy on my end, then you're more than welcome to check that out, irisreading.com/comp. Looks like Bob is joining us from Wichita. Welcome, Bob. Thanks for stopping by. Erica's from LA. Welcome. And Monica is joining us from Mexico City. Bienvenida. Welcome, welcome. Very happy to see you. Terry's joining us from New York City. Hello. Welcome. How's the weather over there? Chicago weather is up in the air. It was raining, then it was 80, then it was 20. So you can only imagine. Okay. Anyway, let's get into the presentation. Here quickly is our social media. So obviously, you know, we are on YouTube. We're also on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Facebook. We have an official business page on Facebook, but we also have a book club, and you'll find it under Book Lovers Assemble or irisreading.com/book lovers. We are called Iris Reading, which means that we do love to read and discuss all things related to reading. Okay, so we are also trying to make reading and learning enjoyable and fun again, right? Most of us, when we think about reading, it's not an automatic happy feeling. We don't usually get a warm, fuzzy feeling. Not everyone, right? So our workshops are designed to help make you a little bit more of a productive reader, but also enjoy the process, whether you're reading for fun or readings for school, anything like that. So if you have attended our workshops in the past, you may have heard of something called the Iris method. Okay, we have kind of created our own version of the study cycle. Okay, and it's the Iris method. So I'll walk you through this 4-step process. If you want to know a little bit more about an individual step, again, you're more than welcome to drop a comment, drop a question, send us an email. We, as I said before, are known for our speed reading workshop where we discuss inspecting and reading in depth. Essentially, what we're saying is we don't want you to just nosedive into the material. We don't want you to just start reading a book from beginning to end. Although that's kind of how we were primed as students in elementary school to never ever look ahead, right? You had to read all the way through to know what was on that last page. You weren't supposed to look back there. So we've kind of changed it up a bit. We want you to familiarize yourself with the structure, how many pictures, how many chapters, right? How long is this book? How long is this chapter, right? All of that. Then decide if you want to read this or not. Isn't it like a pretty awful feeling when you're reading something and you thought it was going to go in one direction? Maybe you thought it was going to lead you to an answer that an answer to a question that you had, and it had nothing to do with the subject at all. It's kind of annoying, right? And it also is annoying when you've read like 4 chapters and you're like, this is a waste of time. I didn't even have to read this book, right? So that is where inspecting and reading are very beneficial, okay? We want to make sure that you're asking questions as well. Very, very important. You've read the information. Now we need to digest the information. So what does it mean? What can we pull from the material that can help us? How is this going to help us pass the exam? What does this have to do with my class? Why did my teacher make me read this, right? It may sound like some pretty funny questions or some sarcastic questions, but the truth is that if you can't answer the questions, then probably don't understand it, right? And if you don't understand it, we shouldn't move on to the final step, which is storing or memorizing this information. A little bit about myself. I, once upon a time, many, many years ago, graduated from nursing school. So I have a BSN in nursing. And first semester of nursing school, I felt like out of my league. I didn't understand any of the medical terminology. I didn't understand nothing related to nursing. It was like literally learning a new language. I had no idea. I felt like I had stepped in the twilight zone. I did not get it at all, right? But I was so overwhelmed and over-caffeinated that I was just like in this cycle of just reading and trying to memorize things that I didn't understand. Okay. Hello, Hemant. Welcome from India. Thank you so much for joining us. And so with that came a lot of problems, right? When you take an exam, you have something memorized that you don't fully understand. It means that you're not actually able to apply that memorized information in these exams, pass the exams, right? And I saw big consequence from not having a very good study routine. So we had to change that up quite a bit and successfully graduate, thank God, nursing school. So today we're going to talk about comprehension. By the way, that was our 4-step process. Again, we want to make sure that you have a systematic approach to reading and learning. You're not just reading and guesstimating, right? This is not the wild, wild west. We want to make sure that we have a plan in motion to read and understand and memorize, okay? And take notes as well. We don't want to just leave it up to chance because that doesn't always go too well, okay? So we're talking again about comprehension specifically today. That was just a little bit on all of some of the workshops that we offer here at Iris Reading. Again, feel free to check that out. But today, comprehension. So when it comes to comprehension, it's usually not for everybody super automatic, right? We read something and not everybody gets it quickly. Some people read it and it still doesn't make sense. And the worst thing is that they have no idea what questions they should be asking. Okay, so that's where this workshop kind of fills in the gap. We want to make sure that we're helping you with some questions that you can ask that can help deepen your comprehension on a specific subject. Okay, so first one being explain it. Can you explain what you're learning? Unfortunately, most people will stop here, but we will discuss why this should not be the only dimension when it comes to deepening your understanding again. You may be able to explain it to the wind, but can you explain it to a classmate, to a colleague, to your teacher? Okay. Next one are the different perspectives on this subject. So, it seems now like there are opposing views on almost everything, right? So look into those opposing views. Why do they think that way? How can you defend what you think versus what they think, okay? Because if you can't, then it might be that you don't actually understand what you thought you understood. Moving on to our self-knowledge, we want to obviously think about ourselves when we're learning and how this can apply to us, our daily routine, how we live our life, right? Empathy is also very important. Emotions are very, very deeply ingrained in us, right? So we want to make sure that we are tapping into that. How do we empathize with the author or with the subject or with this field? What motivated a person to pursue a career in this field, become an expert in this field? Why? What happened in their life that made them want to go this route? Okay. Moving on to practical application, and this one is especially important when we're maybe not jiving with the material. Like, I know when I was in high school, algebra and me, we never got along. I never liked algebra, and I said it to algebra's face all of the time. I could not stand it, and I would always think, when am I going to use this in the real world? Why are we dedicating so much time to this? Well, little did I know that so much of that is useful in the future, especially in nursing school. I was surprised to see how much algebra was actually tied in. So, practical application. Okay, think outside the box. Think outside of right now and big picture. Okay, and our final dimension is, how has this been interpreted by others? Okay, whether that be in literature, whether that be in art, in music, in whatever it is that you can think of, there are different interpretations on different subjects. Okay, even just the language, an interpretation is very different. Like if we're maybe saying something in English, we try to translate that into another language, the meaning is not always there. Okay, the original meaning is not there. So these are our 6 dimensions. We're going to take a subject that most of us are fairly aware of. I think that most of us would think, oh, I know, I comprehend, I get it. We'll see in just a moment. But first, we want to see what your comprehension strategies, like how are they right now? Okay, we want to establish a little bit of a baseline. So what we're going to do, we are going to read through a document, again with this irisreading.com/comp link. We're going to read through something really brief using these strategies that you already have on hand. I want you to, again, just read and then think about what you understood from this article. At the end of it, so I'm going to give you up to 2 minutes to read this. At the end, give yourself a percentage. If you want to share your percentage with everyone, feel free to do so. You don't have to, okay? We're going to do this exercise twice, once before diving deep into these 6 dimensions and once after. And we're going to see if maybe after, when you apply 1, 2, or all 6 of these dimensions, your comprehension is a little bit higher. Now, obviously, we will be reading 2 different articles. It wouldn't be fair to go over the same article twice, right? That wouldn't necessarily make sense. So we're going to read through focus rituals. I will disable my webcam and turn off my mic. I'll give you 2 minutes to read. You'll notice the timer ticking away in the middle of the screen, and then I will interrupt you when the time is up. Here we go, everyone. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, very, very good. So we have read. Now go ahead and give yourself a percentage. What would you say you got? 20, 30, 40, 50, 100%. What is your percentage? Okay, this is just using the comprehension strategies that you have on hand that you brought to class today. Okay, now let's get into the 6 dimensions. Let's talk about them. Let's tear them apart, put them back together, and see if once we learn all of them, we read again. Maybe we apply 1 or 2. This will be timed, so you won't really be able to use all 6 unless you're like thinking at the speed of lightning, right? Or light, I'm sorry. So in the future, just whenever we read anything, we want to take our time and really meditate on each of the 6 dimensions. But right now, we're going to go on something really basic, which is gravity. And I shouldn't say basic. It's not basic, right? But we have a fairly comfortable level of comprehension with what we've learned with gravity, right? Like we know gravity, we know what goes up comes down, we know things are not going to float into the atmosphere here on Earth, right? Because of gravity. So you would think, okay, well then this person, I mean, you know the functions, you know how it works, so you must understand it really well. Well, let's think about this. When it comes to gravity and the theory of relativity, can you explain that to me? Can you explain how this ties into that? Can you explain how quantum physics ties into gravity? Or can you even maybe explain to me what gravity has to do with, or what distance has to do with gravity? Okay, because we're all fairly comfortable with gravity, so we should be able to answer these other questions. But I would guesstimate that maybe some of us can, right? So maybe our understanding on that subject isn't as deep as we thought it was. So step 1, explain it, okay? Explain what you know to someone else. Explain it to your classmate, explain it to your mom, explain it to whoever. If you speak another language, explain it in that other language. Why? Because the goal is to get whoever you're explaining it to ask you questions like why, how, when, and just answering, well, that's just how gravity works is not an answer. Okay, so when you have someone say, okay, well, fine, you keep saying that gravity pushes things down, then explain exactly what is involved with the ball rolling down the hill. Like, why will it roll down? What is the science behind it? And notice we won't be giving you any of these answers, not because we can't, but because we want you to research it. We want to set a template or an example of what questions you should be asking when you're learning. Okay, so number 1 is explain it. And preferably explain it to people who do not understand what you're learning, okay? So that you are forced to explain it in simple terms or in complex terms. We want to make sure that when we're explaining it, we're not just like regurgitating something that we've memorized in the text, like a vocabulary word definition. We don't want to just repeat it because is that understanding? Is that comprehension? No, right? So thank you guys so much for dropping your comprehension percentages in the chat. I'm seeing 40%, 30%. Thank you so much. I see some other questions. I will definitely address them closer to the end of the presentation. So thank you so much for asking. That IELTS exam I have heard is very, very tricky. So we will get to that in a moment. Okay, so step 1 is explain it. If you can explain it, that's good. Don't stop there. Okay, moving on to the 2nd dimension, which are the different perspectives on this subject. Okay, and it's safe to assume that most subjects will probably have some kind of just, a team that says that's not true. Okay, so when it comes to gravity, did you know there's a whole group of people, and they exist, that don't believe in gravity? They call themselves the Anti-Gravity Alliance. This is a real thing, by the way. We didn't make this up. We found this with researching for this presentation. Anti-Gravity Alliance, gravity is a lie. If gravity exists, then how do birds, bats, and insects fly? How do airplanes fly? Why do balloons float up? What makes a hot air balloon keep from falling from the sky? Okay. Now, if we have a good understanding on gravity, we should be able to defend what we think we know versus this. Okay, but it doesn't stop here. So if you're thinking, oh, well, this might just be one person, like it's just one person, it's not a big deal. No, there's more. They have a list of supporting websites on their website, and we did go through them. They are all functional websites. So, that's something to think about. National Center for Science Education is referring to gravity as only being a theory. So we take something we thought was fact, and now we have the word theory, and fact and theory, they're not necessarily, they don't have the same meaning. So wait a minute, this is starting to get a little interesting. Is it a fact? Is it a theory? What's going on here? Okay, and we go even further. We've got people submitting dissertation for PhDs on the subject, calling gravity a myth. We even found an astrophysicist named Brian Keating. Dr. Brian Keating says that gravity is not a real thing. So we found all this information, all these people, all these organizations that claim that gravity is not real. So my question to you is, or you may be now like, wait a minute, what? Why? Those are good questions, right? So we want you to ask those questions. We want you to think about that. Why? Well, you're going to have to dive into those websites and research for yourself and see why they believe that, and see if you can defend why you do believe in gravity, if it is that you do. We're not taking a side. We are neutral, okay? But it's just asking questions, making sure that we're asking the right questions. Moving on to the next dimension. Not every subject, by the way, will have a different perspective, but I think that most probably will. Okay, and some of these dimensions may apply a little more than others. Not everyone will be able to be used equally. Okay, maybe 4 of the 6 for one subject, maybe 5 of the 6 for a different subject, right? So just keep that in mind. Moving on to your self-knowledge, and you might have heard someone say, oh, well, it's not all about you. Well, it actually is when you're learning. Everything is about you. You're the one taking the exam, right? You're the one in class. So yeah, you got to tie this back to you and how you live and what you do, right? We want to look for function and purpose, daily function and purpose, monthly, weekly, yearly. How do we do this? How does this apply in our daily lives? Okay. Now, it's springtime it's like spring borderline summer here in Chicago. It's at that time of the year where the plants are starting to grow and the grass is growing, and there's so much like pollen in the air, and allergies are high. And anybody who suffers from allergies right now, they wake up with their face swollen because it's just that time of the year. That's what happens here in the city. So with gravity and harmony with gravity, what does this have to do with anything? Well, if you do have allergies, then some of us might have to use eye drops, right? Because of the irritation. Now, when we are using these eye drops, we never have to worry about the drops floating up into space, right? We know it's just a matter of guesstimating, right, where your eyeball is when you're dropping the drops in your eyes. But we know gravity is going to help us, right? We know that it's going to float down, it's going to come down. So that's a very simple application for function and purpose. Okay, you can think about other scenarios too, and you want to do that on a daily basis. You want to think about it, because if you don't ruminate on it, if you don't really see how it applies in different areas of your life, well, then we're not really going to grasp the meaning on this subject. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Okay, and then you'll notice this is a lot of like meditating, like thinking about something. And again, we want to kind of train you to ask everything we're asking. Okay, we want you to think about it really, because maybe most of us are kind of on this plan where we just want to read and understand automatically, and that's not always how it works. Some subjects are not like that. Moving on to the next step, empathy. Okay, how can we empathize with the subject? Now we're thinking about gravity, so some of us might be like, well, maybe this doesn't apply. Actually, it can. Think about some of the things that we do here on Earth and that maybe astronauts can't while they're up in space. Simple things like maybe take a shower, go to the bathroom. When we shower, when we go to the bathroom, we know that gravity is helping us, right? We know that things are going down. But what happens when you try to use the bathroom up in space? It might seem like a silly question, but if it's me imagining, I don't think that it's a very pleasant experience, right? And of course, we would love it if maybe someone from NASA chimed in one day and told us a firsthand account of what it's like to use the bathroom. You're more than welcome to join us. Please, please do. We want to hear everything about what it's like to be up in space. But think about it, right? Maybe some of us are like, ew, why would you want to think about that? Because we want to empathize. We want to tap into your feelings. So we had to do some research. We couldn't just let this one go. We had to figure out what's the deal with going potty up in space. And it's we found this article from the Smithsonian, and it says, how do astronauts go to the bathroom in space? A look at the space shuttle toilet and the deepest, darkest secrets about spaceflight. Article said, one paragraph, for waste deposits, the toilet has foot straps and thigh braces to help astronauts stay in place, and airtight bags on hand for toilet paper disposal. Astronauts spend a lot of time in training sitting on space toilets to learn how to create a strong seal and how to align themselves properly. In Houston, the Johnson Space Center has a bathroom with 2 space toilets for practice. One model is fully functional. The other, a positional trainer, has a video camera beneath its rim and a television monitor on a table in front of it. Astronaut Mike Massimino calls this second toilet the deepest, darkest secret about spaceflight in the training video. I think we need to take a moment and just think about what that's like and what that could be like for us. I don't think I'll ever be up in space, but I empathize now a lot more with astronauts and again with the subject of gravity. Okay. Something to keep in mind. Now, these might seem like silly questions. I actually follow this astronaut on TikTok, and she has this whole series on what it's like to bathe up in space, specifically washing her hair. And she's got like this little bottle that kind of looks like a Capri Sun juice with a straw coming out of it, and she'll like squeeze water into her scalp, and then the water will obviously float away, so she'll like catch it and she'll push it into her scalp. I just can't imagine what that would be like, you know, when you want to take a nice shower but you can't because the water is running away from you. Empathy. Okay, empathy. So yeah, interesting, right? Moving on to the next dimension, which is practical application. Okay. Now, this one is fairly simple because gravity, we see it, or we don't see it actually, but we see the effects of it on a daily basis. We know if we throw something, it's going to come crashing down. We don't have to worry about that. But maybe in those subjects where we don't like the subject, it's not working out for us too well. Like for my example with gravity back in with algebra back in high school, it would have been good to think about and research how that would be used later on. Okay, taking a moment to actually understand what the practical application was with that subject. Maybe I would have done a little bit better if I had at least understood why it was important. okay? And not just me thinking I have to do this because I have to do this, but more so, how is this in the real world? Like, how is this applied in the larger world? So we really do want to think about that. We don't want to just obsess over the material and just like look at it and try to understand it and try to memorize it. Sometimes we have to take a step back, okay, and stop thinking so small picture and think outside of the box and into the larger world. Now, our final dimension that we'll talk about is this interpretation by others. Okay, so we're talking about gravity a lot today. And when we researched gravity, we came across like this whole line of like sculptures that are gravity defying sculptures. So one of them looks like this. This is called The Force of Nature by Lorenzo Quinn. Right? We've talked a lot about gravity. We know that things are pushed down to earth. So how is it then that this statue is able to stay upright? That's weird, right? Here's another one. This is in the Fontainebleau in Paris, France. This doesn't even seem real, right? We've got this elephant holding himself up. Unbelievable. I have no idea like what amount of glue or formaldehyde is keeping this thing upright, because gravity, right? I'd be very scared to walk around it just because you never know. The floating rocks in Cairo, we had a participant join us last week that expressed that he actually helped with installing some of these sculptures in Egypt. So that was really nice to have someone firsthand join that has seen these. I would love to see these. It's like my dream to see the floating rocks. I think of all of the gravity defying sculptures, these are probably my favorite. But again, this doesn't necessarily make sense. How is this happening? Why is this happening? Right? Gravity, hello, what is this? Well, how is this all here? Okay. And also we found these book sculptures that are in Madrid, Spain. How is this a thing? Like, how are these sculptures actually upright? They're beautiful, right? They're absolutely stunning to look at, but what amount of glue is keeping this sculpture up? I don't think any amount of crazy glue, gorilla glue, whatever type of glue is enough. That's a lot of books. Books are heavy. So we've taken gravity, we've seen artists create some gravity-defying sculptures, and now we may be thinking, you know what, I probably don't have as good of an understanding on gravity as I thought I did. Okay. We also asked a lot of questions, so if any of those questions interested you, hopefully that motivates you to do some research. Because again, sometimes we just don't know what questions we should be asking. So let's recap all of the dimensions again. And we're playing around with creating like a worksheet or a sticky note or a bookmark or something so that you can use it as a guide when reading and studying. First being explain it. Now we talked about explaining. Can you explain it to who? And you know, in your class, whether it's a teacher, it's a classmate, it's your mom, it's your sister, whoever it is, explain it to them so that they poke holes in what you think you know. And then you have to explain it, right? A different level. It's like an onion, okay? It's not just the outside. We want to get into the inside of this subject. The different perspectives as well. So what do people say? What is the talk about? What's the talk of the town with this subject? Not everybody, but some, maybe the majority, will have some opposing views. So just look into them, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them, but you want to know how to defend and what to say if you ever had to defend your subject, right? Moving on to self-knowledge. We want to think about what we do on a daily basis and how that applies to us. Try to find how the subject ties back to you. Okay, because it is all about you at the end of the day. Empathy. Talked about those astronauts up in space that have to go to the bathroom. I feel terrible, but it's good to think about your feelings when you're learning something, right? because there has to have been something that happened in a person's life, or maybe an experience that they've gone through, something that they've read that has motivated them to be either the the person that knows, just the expert in this field. So why are we reading out of this textbook? Why are we reading? Why did this person write this? What motivated them to do this much research? So empathize. Practical application as well. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about how to use this in the future in our daily lives, okay? Especially when we're talking about subjects that we don't like. Because it can be very automatic, it can be an automatic reaction to just be like, I don't care because I know I won't need this. But how sure are we that we're not going to need it in the future? Okay. And our final dimension, how has this been interpreted by others? Okay, so again, art, music, paintings. When I was researching, or when we were researching, I'm sorry, this presentation, I came across this piece that Gustav Holst composed on the planets, and it's called Planets. Obviously not specifically gravity, but it was just nice to discover something that is somewhat similar, right? Or in the same field of gravity. And when I listened to it all, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Okay, I'd never heard anything like that. So recommend checking it out on YouTube. Again, it's Gustav Holst, Holst, and the piece is called Planets. And if I'm not mistaken, he has one piece for each of the planets. So it's really cool. Saturn is probably my favorite one in the entire score. So look for different interpretations on the subject. Now, let's tie in a little bit about inspection. Okay, because inspection can also help you understand pretty quickly as well. We get a nice, it's like an appetizer before the entree, like you get to see what's coming. So we want you to inspect anything you need to read before you read it. These are the things you want to look for when you're inspecting: the intro, headings and subheadings, words in bold, titles of charts, tables and diagrams, the conclusion, as well as any questions that may be published in the piece. Okay. So we're going to test this out together. We're going to inspect something, and let's just see what our comprehension is after we inspect it. So we've got this article, Going with the Flow. Let's read through it together. Only what's in yellow, because remember, we are practicing the principle of application. So it says, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Okay, number 1, realize that you can't control everything. Number 2, become aware. Number 3, breathe. 4, get perspective. 5, practice. 6, laugh. And 7, realize that you can't control others. Should have highlighted that last sentence. It says, this passage is selected from the book Focus, A Simplicity Manifesto in the Age of Distraction by Leo Babauta. I have the book, so if you want it, it's free. The author has given us permission to distribute it to anyone who is interested in receiving a copy, so I'll share my email in just a moment. So now we have inspected. We got a good understanding of what to expect, right? We know what's happening here. So I'm going to give you up to 2 minutes to finish reading this article, and then we will talk about our comprehension again. Okay, so maybe we can think a little bit on some of the things that we've talked about earlier. We tie in that inspection and how it's giving us a nice appetizer before the entree, so to speak. So here we go. Let's finish reading the article, disabling my webcam one more time, and you'll notice the timer ticking away in the middle of the screen. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we read through the article. We had a nice inspection beforehand. We knew what we would come across, and hopefully that helps us have a better percentage of comprehension now afterwards. So assess your comprehension now. Now I know this was time, so in the future you won't have to give yourself 2 minutes to see how much you understood, right? Hopefully more time. It's just we have to keep the presentation under an hour. So in the future, again, do this inspection. It's really, really helpful. It's very important. It's actually something that we all live by here at Iris Reading, and we hope you do it as well for the rest of your life with anything you need to read. Okay. Of course, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, you're more than welcome to check out our speed reading workshop that we have, #1 workshop, and it really breaks down other useful takeaways from this inspection, okay, and really how tremendous it is. So if you made an improvement, if you noticed, okay, the second time I did a little bit better, maybe got just a couple of numbers higher, that's fine, that's great, okay. Maybe it wasn't super duper fast, maybe it wasn't as high as we would have wanted, but it just takes practice. We just have to continue to practice. This might be the first time that most of us have ever even talked about comprehension, so to speak, right? So that's okay. It's not going to happen automatic, okay? Wonderful. Excellent. Haman, looks like you made improvement. That's tremendous. We went from 30 to 70%. Okay, so I'm very, very happy that you shared that. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Inspecting is really good. It's like getting the gist of what to expect first, right? So it's just giving us a nice taste. Now we'll finish up with this IRIS method. So we did say we are IRIS reading. We want to make sure that if you take anything away from the workshop, it's our 4-step process. Please don't forget us. Okay, so the I is for inspecting. Inspect anything you need to read before you read it. Afterwards, decide, do I have to read this right now, or maybe not? Maybe I don't have to. Okay, ask questions, all the questions. We talked about a lot of questions today, right? Use that template that we shared earlier, the 6 dimensions. Ask them all before you try to memorize anything. Okay, because if you're not getting it, you shouldn't try to memorize it, because it's not going to make sense, and it's almost like memorizing something that's really big and really scary. Okay, I get emotional about these things because I remember what it was like for me in nursing school. You know, I'm just like, oh God, it was a real struggle. That book that we mentioned earlier, if you want a copy of the book, feel free to send me an email at cynthia@irisreading.com. Again, Leo Babauta, the author, has given us permission to distribute this book. It's a tremendous read, and it's great that it's free as well. So definitely feel free to reach out. Again, we are on social media, so if you do enjoy our content, if you enjoyed the workshop, if you want to learn more, you want to see what we're doing, you want to get to know us here at Iris Reading, check us out. Okay, we would love to have you join the family. Again, it's a great way to reach out to us as well. It is connected to our devices, so we will get notifications immediately. And if not, you also have my email, cynthia@irisreading.com. And of course, feel free to check out our website. So with that, we will wrap up today's presentation. Thank you all so much for coming, and I hope to see you in a future workshop, everyone. Thanks. Take care.